What's going on, guys? Welcome back. It's Tactical Foul. Today, we're coming back home a little bit. Actually, right in the state of Michigan. He is the director of the National Soccer Girls Academy. I know I'm really keeping it in house, but traveling about 2 hours south. He's also a U.S. Soccer A license coach. Had stop in Cincinnati. Many of you may know him from there. He's one of the most highly regarded youth coaches in the country, and for a good reason. He's doing incredible stuff all over the place. Please welcome David Robertson.
Thanks so much. I'll pay you for that intro later.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Sounds good for sure. First off, I think just because it's the most relevant thing, we talked about it a little bit. How's everything going? Obviously, you had a little bit of a hiccup not that long ago. Got stuck in Texas, but obviously we're happy to have you back in the nice, still cold state of Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was definitely an interesting experience going through something that even Texans have never gone through. It was just this collection of iced rain for a while and then snow, and the GA did a really good job of managing things as best they could with canceling things and then creating some avenues for people to be able to play if they could. But it was a wild situation for sure. Definitely not the weather we were expecting. I think everyone was thinking might get a little tan and come back home, and turns out it was colder down there than it was here in Michigan. So it was quite the opposite.
That is absolutely wild. Like I said, glad that you're back finally, and we're able to get on this. What I want to do is I want to go back a little bit. I want to start like right from the early days, childhood, kind of where like your, not necessarily the coaching, but just like soccer in general, where you kind of were brought up in that.
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey. Obviously, the like hodgepodge accent tells you I'm not from the US so much. So grew up in Europe, had stops. Kind of both my parents are Scottish. A lot of time. You've got England. We lived in Germany for a little while, and then came over to the US. So was lucky enough to experience kind of multiple different types of culture. I think is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Even when I was in Germany, I was lucky enough to go to the actual German school.
Nice.
For a year, as well as an international school. So kind of got to experience and move around, and there's challenges that come with that, but at the same time, as you get later in life, you start to really value different cultures and enjoy travel and see how other people view the world as well, which is quite unique. But for those that haven't been over to Europe, it's people always laugh when I say that football really is a religion. It's your pajamas that you wear at night as a kid have the crest on it. It's what you talk about at breakfast. It's your lunchbox for school. I mean, it's everything. Those guys are your heroes. It's so it's been in my DNA. It's just it's what I get excited about. I've got the unfortunate part of being born into supporting Newcastle United. So we had some good years quite a long time ago that all the guys here give me endless dogs abuse about. That's how I always bring us up as relevant was, the early 2000s, but we're in a bit of a struggle at the minute, but loyal through and through. So
there you
go. They still get me excited and hopeful every game. And then they break my heart at the same time. It was interesting when we came over to kind of the US, and, I'm 33 now. So when we came over, I was a teenager and kind of got to experience kind of the growing culture here. It was, MLS was established, but not really, in the same state that it is now. It's obviously grown and got better. And, there's a lot of South American influence now as well. And obviously, this kind of crop of generation that's gone over to Europe and been successful, which has been really good to see. Because I think everyone here knows how much talent there is in the US. It's just about, one, how you find it, two, how you develop it, and three, how you showcase it. So, I was able to kind of experience that and see what things are like. And it was, I always joke that I think my mom knew I was going to be a coach before I ever did. She, it might have just been to get me out of the house because she was sick of me, to be honest. But she sent me to my first coaching courses when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
So I did the old E and the F license, and,
Yep.
Was up there, and it was me and a bunch of soccer dads in jeans in a high school gym. And, just some basic stuff. So I had my E and my F license when I was 16, and, started coaching teams when I was 18. So just when I went off to college at the University of Cincinnati, and, reached out randomly to a local club and just said, hey, I'm interested in this, expecting them to, maybe not even reply. But 20 minutes later, I had an email saying, yeah, be here tomorrow, you're going to coach this team. And it was sort of like, oh, okay. Had no cones, no vests, just showed up, got handed this bag of stuff. And it was, like a U10 boys second team back when they played 11v11 still at, U8 basically. So it was a blast, and that kind of got me into it. And, it really is true that it's the next best thing to playing, right? I think when we all miss playing, but it gives you a lot of that, and then you get to see the game in whole different ways. So I had grown up there, moved around a bit in Cincinnati, had gone away, come back, spent a little bit of time in Rhode Island, came back to Cincinnati, did some more coaching, kind of grew in that, and then ended up at Cincinnati United Premier, who was the Cup, as it's typically known, which is kind of the dominant club in Cincinnati, and worked my way up there to become a director. Was one of the girls directors there, and then became the director of the Cincinnati Development Academy, which was the Development Academy club sponsored by FC Cincinnati, the MLS team. So,
nice.
I was lucky enough to grow with that organization and, tackle a lot of stuff head on and get a lot of hands-on experience that I think a lot of times can take 15, 20 years. And I got it in a couple of years. So it was quite brutal at times figuring things out, and you learn by your mistakes, but you grow off of it, right? And you really figure out what you're made of and what you believe in. And, I was very aggressive in my coaching licenses early, in terms of I had my B license by the time I was 23, 24. And then I actually just got my, I did all the United Soccer coaching licenses. So I had at age 24, just before my 25th birthday, I had the, USC, what was the NSCA Premier Diploma, US Soccer B license, a couple of the English FA licenses. So, I felt like I knew everything. And then that was the point when you started to really realize you don't really know very much, right? So you get into this journey of discovery and all the different things that relate to coaching, not just the X's and the O's. So, waited a little bit of time before, going and get the new US Soccer A license a couple of years ago, which was a phenomenal experience. And then, got invited by US Soccer to the kind of invite only academy director course, which was a year-long course where we went to Spain. We went to, places all across the US to work with youth national teams, to work with scouting departments, to work with pro clubs. So I got to spend time with the Spanish FA, with Atletico Madrid's youth program, all sorts of stuff, which was a phenomenal insight, into what they're doing and what we can bring over. And, as this country still tries to develop what is the US identity, right? Because no one really knows.
Yeah.
But we're all kind of working towards what our own thing is. And I think that's one of the really cool things about Nationals is it's got a pretty strong identity of what it wants to be and how it wants players to play and develop and coach. So yeah, that's my kind of ramble there in a nutshell a little bit. So
no, that's awesome, and I think a good place to kind of like segue off that is like the education stuff. Obviously, one thing that is very clear about you is the fact that you have gotten a lot of licenses. Obviously, I talked about the US A license, but yeah, you have multiple different licenses. USC, which I appreciate them because obviously the NSCAA was way harder to say and it's way more of a mouthful. So right. USC is great. But a lot of different avenues for education, and it seems like you've kind of taken all of them. One other one that I'm familiar with, we've talked about on here before, is 343 as well. I know that that's something that you've been involved with as well. When you look at like the education and all of the courses that you've done, one, obviously you've done it all. What's the importance for you of doing the licensing? Because obviously there's more than just going to licensing courses to get education. But where do you see the importance there? And really, what's kind of been your best experience or resource when it comes to education?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, it's like school in a way, right? The degree doesn't necessarily mean that you're an expert in it, but It means that you're committed to the education process, which I think is a big thing. So, we all know A licensed coaches that aren't necessarily very good. And we all know people that have no license that are phenomenal, right? So it's not a guarantee of anything. I think it's just, it does show your commitment to educating yourself and receiving, at least a certain level of competence in what should be done. For me, I've always had this kind of thirst to learn, right? And, that's, I joke as well, because my mom always laughs when I say that, because I didn't really apply it to actual school. But, when it was the fun stuff like football and, then obviously coaching and stuff, there's never too much.
Yeah.
So, I tried to explore all sorts of avenues. And early on, so when I was a younger coach, it was all about, basically, okay, who are the successful people and how do I copy them, right? And, I was lucky enough to go and spend time like shadowing Randy Waldrum a little bit at Notre Dame when they put on the Notre Dame Coaching Symposium. I got like quite close with the University of Louisville men's staff when Ken Lola was there, and would go spend time there. So I got to learn from all these like really big resources, and I'd reach out to colleges, pro teams. I got to spend 2 weeks shadowing at FC Cincinnati. Got to do all these different cool things just by asking, right? And then obviously the licenses, you take little bits and pieces. So I think as you mature as a human being, you realize that coaches are good thieves, right? But we're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. It's about, okay, how can I figure out what I really believe in as a coach, both in terms of what I want to see on the field, how I'm going to teach it, who I'm going to teach it to, and then who I'm going to be as a person. Like, what do you want to be known for? So I think that was the big kind of evolution for me in the last 5 years was, okay, being challenged about what I really believe in, how I really believe the game should be played. And that the 3-4-3 methodology really hit home pretty instantly. And that was just it was a really good way as a young coach. And I remember my first year of subscribing to that, I think it was a weird number. I seem to remember it was like $277. And I think at the time I was making like $1,200 to coach a team. Right. Yeah. And it was, I was throwing everything into this. This is the stage of, I was cutting grass at the complex. I was lining fields. I was putting nets on goals. I mean, just doing anything I could. Right. So you're living on ramen noodles in the parents' basement. And I went, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put, 20% of my entire savings and everything into this. Right. And it was great because it allowed you to think of, well, this is how I've always thought of the game, with some tweaks and components, but now there's actual practical application.
Right.
And you can take it and see how it would build. And then you obviously learn things off that and build off of it, and I've had some good interaction with those guys, and they're great people, and obviously have a great history of developing some top talent. So, it was good in that aspect. And then probably the thing that really shaped me as a coach and how I view the game was actually the A license that I took, the new one. So I was really lucky to have an instructor called Didier Chambron, who kind of wrote was one of the leads of writing the new A license when it came in. And, he's done a ton of work in France, on the professional side, on the youth national team side. He was in charge of Oceania's like coaching education, stuff like that. So he knows his stuff, to say the least. But, what he did was he constantly challenged me about, well, what about this? Why do you believe that? Is that really true? Is that right? And there was, I remember distinctly being pulled in after one of my sessions that I ran, and he goes, what about this? Did you do it the right way? And I went, yeah. And he goes, okay, why? Gave him the reasons, and he goes, you're 100% correct. I just wanted to see if you believed it. Right. So it was all about, really challenging you to have not just taken various people's thoughts and then, you're sort of hodgepodging things together. Right. It's like, well, I want to possess like Barcelona. I want to defend like Atletico Madrid. I want to, counterattack like Leeds. And you go, well, actually, those don't really all fit together. You can take bits and pieces, but, you've got to think about how you believe the game should be played. And then it's all about how do you demonstrate that to your players so that they actually take it on board as opposed to just words. Right. So he changed a lot of how I thought about things, and kind of really reaffirmed some of, my beliefs, and then challenged others where you really think of how things interlink and whether they actually correlate or not. Just as simple as, okay, you want to play an expansive brand of football, right? Which means that obviously your players are spaced out. But then if your first principle of defending is to be compact, is that realistic? Right? It's, they just necessarily on a piece of paper, it sounds great, but then in the practical application, it's not really the case. Yeah. So, I think it was really good in that aspect, and, having a methodology, having a curriculum, and okay, this is what we're developing for. This is the end product that we want to get to. And then this is how we reverse engineer it, as opposed to, I think, everybody does it, but in your early coaching career, unless you're, some savant of coaching, everyone just does, oh, I like this activity, I like that activity, and they sort of correlate, but yeah. Right. And then we get in on the weekend and we go, why is this not working? Exactly how we want. So it's that kind of evolution of learning how to really apply what you want, and then how to make sure that you're focused in those training sessions, not on all the other extra stuff that happens, but stuff that relates to the game and that exact principle, right? Because it's easy to try and coach, 10 topics, let alone 2 or 3, but it's actually really hard to just focus on one. Right. Because you notice other things that are going on and you go, I want to fix that, but that's actually going to mess up the decision making process that I need here, or take the focus away from it. So it was that was kind of my real aha moment, I think, and that kind of helped me. I went into the A license, and this is probably going to sound incredibly arrogant, but I had, developed a ton of youth national team players, sent, 100 players on to play in college. I've been part of a staff that won a national championship. So for me, it was kind of this like, well, what else, what can there be? And I went into that and went, I know nothing, right? In terms of, I've got so much more to learn, and it just kind of reinvigorated me, and made you realize how much more there is to it, especially to practice what you preach in terms of talking about, kind of this holistic development. And how do you take great soccer players and make them realize that they're great people as well, and how those two should mesh together and things like that. So, for me, that was my big kind of, a lot of the stuff that, but then actually realizing it is something different. So
no, I think that's something that like I figured out, and it's like a big learning thing for me this last year was just like, you're talking and like you're trying to do things, you make these tweaks or whatever, but realistically, these kids, they have a radar for like if you believe it or not, and when you don't believe it, right? Like they don't buy in all the way, and you can see, and like you would never think that like, well, they don't realize, you're the coach. No, they realize because like they see you on a daily basis, basically, and your attitude probably towards like what you believe in is going to be drastically different than you doing something that you don't actually believe in. And so I think that's, for me, it was like, all right, that's step one, realistically, is like, I can't do anything that I don't 100% believe in, because they're not going to buy in. And if they're not bought in, it doesn't really matter how good the tactic or whatever it is. It doesn't matter if your players can't buy into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing that I think that sometimes gets missed in this, and you kind of are talking, is like the players do not buy into like the tactics or like any of the coaching. They buy into us as people, and the same way as we have to buy into them as people. And it's like you're talking about, right? Like trying to make them not just soccer players but human beings as well. And so like I think you have to kind of take that in with your coaching. Like you got to buy into each other. If you can't do that, it does not matter how good you are on paper. Like it's just not going to work.
Yeah, and I think it goes into being able to relate directly to your players, right? So it's, if you're working with 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, you have to be able to pretend you're on a pirate ship with them. You can't just we're going to do a rollover, and because they have the attention span of like 2 seconds. So if you get them to buy into an adventure and they happen to get some skills out of it, brilliant, right? But at the same time, the primary groups that I work with are 13, 14 up to 18, 19-year-old girls. And for them, you laugh, but it's Instagram and TikTok are two massive things for them.
I know.
So if you as a coach are there going, oh, it's so stupid, and belittling it or whatever, it's like they're instantly like, this guy, but if you occasionally hop in one of these silly videos with them, or you're joking with them about stuff, or you make fun of their horrific dance moves, they love it, right? And it creates a whole different vibe and culture. And at the end of the day, it's, and you alluded to it there, is the kids' bullshit meter is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
They're a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And I think it's the big thing of, as a coach, to be successful with this age of player is you, have to be vulnerable, right? In terms of letting them see that you're a human being too, that you're not, because to them, for the most part, you're a role model. You come in with, this license, that license, you develop this player, that player. So you're kind of this like mythical creature at first, right? And that's the getting it down to, no, I'm just a human being who worked really, really hard and happened to have some talent. And, my job is here to make you better, right? And to help you. And that we're all kind of in this together, and creating that culture of, this is our journey. It's not just yours. It's not mine. It's our successes at each other's.
No, I agree. And and I talk about this all the time, is like, I have so much to go where it comes to like the tactics and different things. The only reason I'm able to kind of, I think, stay ahead and keep going is because like I've kind of dove into that side of it. It's just like being able to, I guess like the man management of the game. And obviously you can see who I look at, and right, like that's kind of how I view the coaching, is like I can get the tactics and stuff, but like if you if I can really get the players to be on my side and really make them feel good, like that's like if I can provide an environment for them where they're just super comfortable and they're enjoying life, like usually the soccer is way better. Um,
Yeah, done.
I do want to talk about Cincinnati, obviously. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit with the national, youth national team players and different things like that. Where do you think where were those foundations? Obviously, Cincinnati was a good club. Cup was a good club, but I think many people would say that you had a massive impact on really making them a powerhouse and helping them become a powerhouse and kind of this elite player factory. Honestly, where does those foundations come from?
Yeah, so it's it was a fun experience, and obviously, anytime there's success, there's certain people's faces that go out front, and but there's a lot of people that lead to this success, and
Yeah.
I'd be failing myself if I didn't mention a couple of them. So it was for myself, Kim Shepper, who is probably one of the greatest developers of young talent,
Yeah.
that kind of worked with the juniors, and obviously she has elite experience. She coached boys, girls, has been in national finals, so she's an incredible resource. And then Bobby Papioni, who's at FC Virginia now. So kind of the three of us had this, it was fun because we coached so many of the high level teams, and we just started doing the extra things, right? So providing players with different resources, adding in more training, building this connection with the juniors program. So we'd always have, they were just called like juniors bonus days. And it was the little like 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds would come out, and our girls would come out and run like fun sessions for them that had relays and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it created role models within the club, right? They were like, I want to be like that player.
Yeah.
And when they saw them at the fields, they were so excited to see each other, and it created this real family atmosphere. And we placed value on every player and every kid. So it was, a lot of times clubs have really good top teams, but there's a huge drop off for team 2, team 3, team 4. We really placed an emphasis on the first team obviously being fantastic, but we had people leaving other clubs' first teams to join our third teams, right? So we had this, there was 1 year just before the development academy started where we actually swept Ohio South State Cup at every age group, which is outrageous, right?
Yeah.
And that came, and in semifinals and finals, a lot of times we're our second teams, right? So it was just this kind of culmination of placing value on everybody, and that you don't necessarily need to have a league attached to your name or anything like that. It's changing the perception that at the end of the day, what makes a club great is the people that are in it and what they're doing. So we really cared about each individual player, their person, and their families. We did what was best for them, and the thing that seems to have been lost in so many people in maybe the last 5-6 years is we just grinded,
Yeah.
right? We were out, 5-6 hours a night for training. We were 12-hour days on the weekend. And was it hard? 100%, and it was you barely slept, but we created this kind of monster, right? And we had, all these kids go on to youth national team success. They were playing a good brand of football. There's players that have gone on to play in the NWSL. Obviously, Rose Lavelle's at Manchester City now, and doing okay for the national team. So, it's a lot of really, really good players. And I think when we looked before, there's like 3 or 4 on the Herman Trophy watch list that played for our club, back then, now in college. So there's this crop that's kind of come through and is now in college that, I think will go on to do really good things, either themselves as professionals or potentially as future coaches, right? Because we kind of created that environment for them, both with the really young little kids, but when they were doing those mentoring sessions, but also, some grassroots coaching education stuff for them. So with the intention of, we want to create this next generation of female coaches, so that, it could be, hey, they're future children, they're the coach of that team when they're at the recreational age, or, what, empower some of these girls to see that it's not just a male dominated career. You can be a director of coaching. You can be a college head coach. You can be a pro head coach. Those are all achievable and reachable. So, it's been, that was kind of the thing. I think it was just, elevating the standards, holding ourselves to standards that we would demand of the players, putting in the work. And at the end of the day, letting people know that they can achieve it, right? Because honestly, Cincinnati is a small city, and Cincinnati will be angry at me for saying that. But it, and you look at it, there's 1.5 million people roughly. You look at Detroit, 7.5 million, right? In the kind of metro area. So it's just this kind of crop of great kids that came through, and they were able to maximize their potential, and they've got more to go on. But yeah, it was a really good experience, and it was really cool to take something that, you know, hadn't been there before and grow it and be a big part of that, and, you know, win the club's first national championship, and, you know, all these players that got into the national teams and, you know, went on to great things. It was really exciting, and I think it's now created a true vision for girls in the future in Cincinnati, that they can go, no, I really can do it, right? I don't have to live in LA or Chicago or Detroit or Miami or, you know, Dallas. It's, you know, me from little old Cincinnati can actually do it, you know, and can go on to the world stage. So, you know, it was carrying that belief in kids and parents. So
No, that's awesome. And one thing I've kind of just wondered is like, and obviously, look, in the United States, there's just a clear discrepancy in success in soccer when it comes to men and women. We know that at the highest stages. What's kind of made you stay in the lane on the girls' side of things and continue that? And obviously, you've had great success, and maybe that's why you stay there. But what draws you to that side of the game?
yeah, no, it's because it's funny, when I first started out coaching, it was just purely boys.
Okay.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would coach girls. And then it, you know, it just came across as the club I was at the time said, hey, we'd love for you to do an extra team, and it's, you know, this, you know, U14 girls team, and hopped on and just loved it. I think it's girls now are way tougher than I remember them being, you know, when I was a teenage boy. Obviously, we're looking at things through a different lens,
Yeah.
but, you know, they're tough, they're gritty, they want to learn. And honestly, their personalities are brilliant, right? You know, they love a good bit of banter. They love, you know, giving it back to you in terms of that stuff. But they're so hungry to learn, and it's a very pure game, right? It's not about generating fouls and always having to be the flicks and tricks. And while that does exist, you know, in terms of, obviously there's some brilliantly talented players, and, you know, we've got a lot of those at nationals, but they're all about, how is the team going to be successful, and how do I play my role in that? And, you know, want to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. And sometimes to a fault, right, is they try to be too perfect, because,
Right.
you know, and then they crush themselves mentally for it. But, you know, it's I've loved my experience on the girls' side, and, you know, I think seeing the tremendous success and upside, especially in the United States, and now, you know, obviously in Europe, you've got, you know, the success of so many of the world stars are now playing in the Premier League, and the Spanish league has 3 professional tiers, and it's just, you can see what growth is happening, you know, not just here in the US with the NWSL, but all across the world. So, you know, it's really something that's exciting to be a part of, and know that you're kind of creating something that's going to be around for a long time, and you've had your hands really in the development of it has been exciting. But yeah, it's seeing the kids that are coming through now. It's, you know, and obviously in Detroit, my lens is mostly nationals and the teams that are around them, but it's been like, we've got frightening talent coming through, like, you know, electric players who are doing stuff with the ball that make you sort of go, how'd you do that? Right. which is exciting to see. So I think it's going to be a very, very special generation coming through in the next 10 years or so.
No, absolutely. And to go on your point of just like watching them do stuff with the ball, I'm just like, yeah, I was not that good at that.
Right.
I'm not that good at this age, but I definitely wasn't even close to that at that age. That's insane. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's very clear to see that, you know, obviously the women have had success, but it's kind of, we're hitting a point, especially in like the women's national team, where it kind of seems like it is the changing of the guard type thing, where you are starting to see some of the more established names, obviously still playing at high levels, but seeing a lot of those names kind of fade out, and you're starting to see some young people fade in. How exciting is the prospect of having this, you know, this deep talent pool that you can possibly be seeing more and more players that you've personally been, you know, you've influenced beyond that stage? And is that at this point in your career a goal for you to like get those players there, or what's that look like for you?
Yeah, no, I think that's always the kind of, you know, as you get more and more into coaching, you realize that your success doesn't come down to winning games, losing games. And, you know,
Yeah.
I'm an ultra competitive person, but at the end of the day, for me, it's all about the success of those individuals, right? And if I've been able to play a small part in that, then that's brilliant. You know, and that help kind of guide them and shape them and realize that potential that a lot of times they don't realize they had, or how to get there, you know, especially in I always laugh when we use the word country, but it's really a continent, that is the US, about how you become one of the 16 to 18 players that gets into a youth national team roster. It's a difficult process, because when you really think about the just vast numbers, it's like you could pick 16 kids in LA or Detroit or, Chicago that could go and actually be a good national team.
Right.
So it's being able to be one of those. And also, if you're not one of those, you still have a huge upside and the possibility to go a long way in terms of things. So it's exciting to see. I think the US has always been, not always, but for the vast majority of established international players, been the dominant number one team in the world, obviously for good reason. And they did a really good job of developing things. I think you're starting to see some nuances of different types of players coming in, your Rose Lavelle's, your Tobin Heaths, your Lindsay Horan's, and obviously the young crop of defenders that are coming in as well, that are very comfortable on the ball and, building. And, I think the US has such an incredible edge in athleticism. So it's about how do you maintain that, right? Because if you take that away, you sort of lose the identity of the country, in terms of what it's been. And honestly, a huge advantage. So how do you marry, maybe sometimes a more aesthetically pleasing brand with the success that's come because of what has been done before? So, I think it's been a really cool thing that, everyone that's come through from the Michelle Akers and the Mia Hams all the way up to, Julie Ertz and all of these girls and Alex Morgan that are in there right now, is they've set the foundation for players to emerge that have a little bit of a different tool set, and to have success where maybe those players before wouldn't have been the ones that got looked at or selected. Whereas now they're kind of the priority of how do you bring in these kind of really special players, but how do you also integrate them with everybody else to create a seamless product is going to go out there and continue to allow the US to repeatedly win World Cups and Olympics and anything that they're in.
Yeah, I one of my favorite stories, like just you talking about like people that wouldn't get looked at, is I was in my D license. I had an instructor that he was doing ODP or whatever for like the Midwest, and Rose was at it, and one of the coaches there was like, yeah, she's good, but just not gonna make it. She's lightning in a bottle, right? Like she'll only strike once, but isn't gonna just you can't do that. She's too small, those things, and like obviously he was completely wrong. So like, but that's kind of the old way of thinking where like this small, incredibly technical little player can't make it because she can't physically handle it. It's like, no, they could do it. And it's what you're talking about. It's like Rose is not the most athletic player on her team, but she's soccer athletic, very capable as an athlete, but she is immensely talented on the ball. And it's like, yeah, like that's kind of the next evolution, and you're starting to see it with the more players that are coming up, and I guess that's kind of the new way of thinking. And I think there's still a place for like, hey, like, I'll be honest, I've always said this, like I'm not the biggest fan of like Abby Wambach as like a player, but I know that like, look, she was the most dominating athlete on the field at all points. It did not matter. So she, like, that type of player has a place, and you see it in the youth game. Like, you find the players that, like, the type of players that you kind of like to see, but like we all know, when you can get that like just superior athlete that can also have the requisite technique, you're like, all right, it doesn't matter, right? Like that person just is gonna dominate regardless. So, but it is nice now that it's not just those players. It is the other crop of players that kind of have been missed. When I guess what I wonder is what do you think, in your opinion, is just kind of like we have that success on the women's side, but not just like success at the highest level. There's just seems like more success developing players on the women's side. Where is like I guess where are we losing it on the men's side for you?
Yeah, so I think the perception sometimes is not always the reality with the men's side. So it was, especially if you're getting a lot of your information from social media and stuff like that, right? Because you look at, I can't tell you the number of people that bash, the club to club leagues, like the, obviously the Development Academy, the ECNL, the Girls Academy, all of these things. But you look at when change occurs, it's a process. You're not going to see results in 2, 3, 4 years. It's going to be about the kids that, started in, let's just use the development academy on the boys side for an example, right? The kids that started in it at its first, kind of age when it was fully aligned at 13, went through it and then created a pro pathway. It's not the kid that spent 1 year or 2 years or 3 years in it, and you're starting to see those kids in terms of your Giovanni Reynas, those types of kids. So all the bashing that occurred, this crop of superstars is the product of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And it's the same thing on the girls' side is, there was obviously a gap, but what the ECNL started and then what the GA was looking to do, and now the GA is, create these super high standards for player development. And is it perfect? Absolutely not, right? I don't know that there is a perfect.
Well, of course.
Or no country's found it yet, right? Everyone has these crops of players, whether it's Belgium or whoever that comes through. But again, you look at the size of the US, it's, each state is the size of a country anywhere else. So, you've got this huge collection, and obviously different types of players are developed in different parts of the country. But I think it's patience a lot of time is a struggle, because the US doesn't necessarily have a 100%, this is our identity. Like, exactly what you're going to get with Spain, right?
Yeah.
Men, women's, they're going to look to possess the ball. They're going to look to dominate you that way. They'll have varying success at it depending on the players that are in the pool at that point. But, the US, you go, okay, for quite a while, it was, okay, we're going to be the German style, then we're going to be the Belgian style, then it's going to be the Dutch style, then it was the English style, as opposed to, I think now it's starting to really take on, now we're going to figure out the American style, right? And yeah, we can take pieces from all of those, right? Because obviously that's the story of America, is it's the melting pot of everyone, right? So you can't ignore your roots and things like that. But now it's about, okay, how there's a lot more Christian Pulisic than people think there are, right? They're out there all over the place. And the thing is, they might be in Nebraska, not just New Jersey. So it's about how we find them and how we get them there. So I think that's the biggest thing is that, obviously the scouting system, but it is changing because obviously the MLS reach is becoming bigger and bigger in terms of their ability to scout players both into their MLS Next Academy systems. But you've also got, the ECNL boys tier that is now providing things as well as obviously the US youth system. And scouting from professional clubs in the United States is massive now, from Europe and South America and things like that. So you look at, there were some of the boys that were going to La Masia in Barcelona. There's American kids there now.
Oh yeah.
There's American kids in Premier League academies. So not saying that they can't develop here, but obviously if you've got the opportunity to go and develop under some of the youth coaches at Arsenal or Chelsea or Madrid or Barcelona, what an opportunity. So I think it's just a little bit of patience, a little bit more than maybe people are willing to give, but that's kind of society and culture at the minute, is everyone wants it right now. So I think that's the big thing, is I think you will see that there is a lot of really positive stuff that came through. You even look at, you guys that are your Josh Sargents, right? That was, the kind of those area. And then now he's starting, in Germany, and there's a lot of those kids coming through. So I think, like I said, I've said it now like 5 times in this sentence, but a little bit more patience. And I think people will see that actually a lot of really good stuff was being done by a lot of clubs across the country, and, people being supportive of that as opposed to condemning, some of the aspects that they would be involved in. I think that's the big piece, is how do we educate parents a little bit more that, some big clubs run well, some big clubs run badly, but, the clubs that have developed players, they've done that for a reason. It's not because they're part of some Illuminati soccer network. It's all about, they're doing it because of what they do. So, buy into them, believe in them. And does that mean that, Joe Schmo in, somewhere in Louisiana can't do it? Absolutely not. That's the cool thing about this country, is there's lots of ways to skin the cat. There's lots of ways to make it. So, and if you're good, you'll be found.
Yeah. I think that's the only point that I think for me that we've really struggled in, and it's a tough thing to do, is to find all these players. There's no way that there aren't going to be players that kind of fall through the cracks, because we talk about it, like, I love Christian, but I promise you there is an 18-year-old in the United States that probably won't get found that is better than Christian. Mm-hmm. And that's just the reality because of how vast it is. And let's be honest, I think also it's soccer in America still has a way to go with being more accessible to everybody, especially that, like, at least the getting noticed and, like, playing at higher levels and different things like that. I think we have a long way to go in terms of that. And it's tough. It's not an easy thing, and it's like you said, there's no perfect answer to this. Because if there was, obviously, the United States would be winning World Cups already, right? At least on the men's side. So I agree, though. I think you see it. There's so much young talent that we're seeing all around the world. Um, and and I think, yeah, if we're a little patient, we're seeing progress. And I think
Is what
the development was there, right?
yeah, and I think as well, it's you bring up a really good point of, accessibility, especially to, inner city, minorities and certain financial situations. I know, even speaking, in Cincinnati, I tried to start a little program called Kicks for Hope that was basically going into inner cities and trying to basically just create an environment where kids would come out and play. And it was, one, there's a distrust there, a lot of people,
Yeah.
of somebody from the outside coming in and especially wanting to work with kids. And so it's about how do you tap into that market. And as well, when you got to talking to some of the mums and dads that would come with their kids, one of the big things they said is everyone still views the ticket out, right, is basketball and football, right, because of the money that can be made.
Right.
Now, I think things are starting to change with that a little bit, but it's still got catching up to do. But a lot of it is not necessarily the financial stuff, because a lot of clubs have tons of scholarship
Yeah,
funds,
of course.
but it's the accessibility to people getting there. Because you look at a lot of it is, single mums, and they're working 2, 3, 4 jobs. They can't physically get their kid to where they need to be for
Yep.
training, right? So that's the big thing to solve, is how do you do that? And, I've got to give credit to like New York Red Bulls, and I'm sure, Sporting Kansas City, I know do a lot of similar things, but some of these academies are starting to figure out about how they create, whether it's ride shares, whether it's residency programs, whether it is, people, paying for, people to go in vans and pick up kids at certain stops and things like that before training. And it's complicated and it's tough. 100%. They've got phenomenal potential, but how do we help them, as
Right.
opposed to just saying, hey, yeah, this is tough and this is a problem? It's okay. What creative solutions can we do? How can we create different things? And I think, look, the cool thing is you're starting to see that across the country, which is good. So
No, and I would love to see more of that. Like, and I think you are. I think that is kind of the one thing that I feel like I'm seeing more of. There seems to be at least this like wave of like attempt to be creative with solutions. We're trying to solve some of these problems, and some of them are probably in totality unsolvable, like to be like at 100%. But at least it seems like there is a real big push to try to really solve some of the issues, and I think that's really all we can ask for. So,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
that's a good thing. I do obviously I gotta we gotta talk about it. You made the jump. You didn't it wasn't a super far drive for you, but you came to nationals. Obviously, you came from a very big club. Nationals in its own right, already a big club. What's a big reason to make that jump for you, coming to a club, and like how did you view that move?
Yeah, so obviously I've been in Cincinnati for quite a long time and had a lot of good opportunities, and arguably had the best job in the city with the program that I got to run. And for me, I'd been lucky enough that I'd never gone looking for jobs. I've had quite a few opportunities come my way, and as far away as California, and outside of the United States, and things just never quite felt right. And there was this very, very small list of clubs, I think, at this point, that I'd said, you know what, I'm willing to up and go for
Yep.
that club. And Nationals was on there. I'd known and coached against Grunthick and Jeremy for many years, and we'd had some great battles with some of our teams. It was ironic that teams from Cincinnati and Detroit were oftentimes competing in national semifinals and finals, but that was the case. And
Yeah.
really respected those guys and what they were building, and obviously the success that they had in the development academy, and just the brand that they looked to play. So it was, the idea had kind of been dropped in my head a little bit a year ago, and I was like, I don't know. And then, it evolved, and then, kind of got accelerated at the beginning of the spring. And it was just, I felt like as well, they have a phenomenal base, and they've done such a great job. And for me, I felt like my skill set could come in and continue to grow and accelerate that, and I think we've been able to bring, a lot of technology and social media and, some training things and coaching education. And, I think it's been really, really exciting to see the growth in the club just in a few months, and how people have really embraced some change and ideas. And that's my big thing is, I came here because it was a phenomenal place, and for me to help continue to elevate that is really my goal. And it's, oftentimes you go into a job because something's gone wrong, right? And somebody's been let go, or there's a crisis that needs solved or something like that. It's very rare that you walk into a really good situation. And I was lucky enough to do that in this job. So, it was exciting to be able to build that and spend some time observing and getting to know people, and then think about, okay, how can we take what's great and make it exceptional? And how can we take what, maybe needs a bit of work and do that and provide this true, player experience, but also coach experience. Because I think that's the key is your coaches have to love it. Otherwise it's all worthless. So creating a real environment where coaches feel like they're valued, that they're developing, and that they have opportunity to continue to grow themselves here at nationals and don't need to look elsewhere. And, in the short, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is now, 8 months, I think that I've been here, it's been really cool to see. And, we've had a lot of people reaching out from outside the club that are interested in what we're doing because it looks different, right? And to be honest, it is. And, our kids love it and they rave about it and they want to train more. And, you see they're really proud to go and wear the badge out and about. And I think that's a really cool thing that should be celebrated. So, you look even at just the other day, there was about 150 kids or so that would go to Super Y League tryouts, and we had 600. It's been really cool to see that. I think Nationals has always done a really good job, but maybe the rest of the world didn't see it as much, right? Because there wasn't as much of a social media presence or anything like that, which is fine. But now that people are starting to realize it and see it, the people that we have calling from, California and Nevada and Florida, asking how we're doing things and, things like that. It's been really cool to see that it's kind of really gone from a really good club into kind of this beacon on the hill as well. That people are going, okay, how do we be more like Nationals? Which is exciting. So yeah, for me, it was one of the very few jobs that I would have left for. But I've loved every minute of it, and people in Detroit have been very welcoming and very friendly, which has been great. So loving every minute of it and excited for a long future here.
No, that's awesome, and obviously very happy to have you. And I mean, being in Nationals but not in the main hub, right, at TC, it's very clear to us. Like for me, I can see like the difference in like the social media presence, like you're talking about, and it does make a difference. It makes it feel as big as what I think Nationals has always been. But it's like you said, it's just you don't have that presence. Everything's on social media now, and that's just the world we live in, right? Like, and if you're not, you're kind of getting left out of the conversation. And so I think that it's a big testament to what what you've done coming in and really ramping that up. And I think that it's a great thing. And obviously, that's off the field, but on the field, obviously having some success. And I imagine you're hoping to you already have, because we've had some players in the youth national teams. But I imagine that's probably a goal of yours, is to continue that trend where you really start pumping out the youth national team players, because it's like you said, the talent is there, and it's just about really providing that platform for them to go. And obviously that's something you've been successful, but I do want to talk about the other side, the kids that aren't going to go make the youth national team, which is perfectly fine. But you said hundreds of kids you've put into college and different things like that. What kind of role do you take when it comes to really helping kids get into college?
Yeah, so I think that's something that we do very uniquely at Nationals now, and kind of brought that with Cincinnati. Is there's so many clubs that just kind of feel that, well, you wear a Nationals badge, so you're naturally going to get X, Y, and Z exposure, which is true, right? But at the end of the day, everything comes down to just relationships, right? So you've got to make sure that your coach knows coaches, they can call on your behalf. And so we do a variety of things. We're lucky enough to utilize video cameras, so we train a lot, do a lot of the training. We do all of our games home and away on that. I make sure that every week colleges and the youth national team scouts get the latest videos that we have, and we can have discussions with them. Also make sure that, and we try to make things as detailed as possible in terms of sending out schematics so that they know who's starting where, what graduation year they are, what college they're committed to if they are, or if not, what they're potentially looking at in terms of a major. So try to really make it as easy as possible for college coaches. And they know what we get in terms of the type of player nationals produces now, because they go, okay, the 19s play like the 17s, play like the 16s, 15s, et cetera, et cetera. So it creates a really good door for that. But as well, create all these, and for anyone that follows us on social media has probably seen them as well. I've got a partnership with a company called Metrica Sport, who, kind of do the pro style, highlighting and stuff like that. Yeah. So I've got access to that software where I use that to help us both with educational videos. So we try to help our players see what Lyon's playing like, what Barcelona's playing like, what, Chelsea and Arsenal on the women's side and Man City are playing like, within our principles. But we do that for college recruiting as well. So individual kids that are uncommitted are highlighted, so that they can be seen for their strengths and what they can bring to collegiate programs, both on the ball and off the ball. So, we've had tremendous success with that. When I came in, I think it was 3 or 4 of the U19s were committed to college, leaving obviously the vast majority of, and they're all 2021 graduates. So in that kind of stressful period now, but all but 2 are now committed. So we're in a situation where, sorry, got the hyperactive dog who's noticed somebody outside. That's so right. It's all about what you can bring to them and provide a personal touch and go above and beyond. So that's the big thing is, we really give our players obviously the natural exposure they get from the club and the opportunities that are there, but also the relationships that I have, that Grontic has, that Jeremy has, that Henry has, all these different sites. And like you said, it's a real mentality that every single player matters. Obviously the quote unquote special players are going to get, X amount more opportunities, but every single person in the program is valued and made to feel that way. So we ensure that everybody gets that, right? Everyone gets the phone calls to market them. And, it doesn't matter whether they want to go to Division 1, 2, 3, JUCO, NAIA, we're here to help them realize that dream and create their roadmap and then get there. So that's the big thing is, we don't just showcase our kids to Division 1. It goes out to every conference, every division, everything like that, which is a nightmare amount of emails that I deal with all the time. But, for me, again, it goes back to that, what so many coaches aren't willing to do is just go and grind, right? They want to just show up and do training sessions. And, that's about 20% of what we get to do, in reality, if you want it to operate well. So it's about being on the phones and sending out email and also knowing what you're trying to send players onto. So, if I think that I've got a really good player, well, they're really good in relation to what? So how can I call a college and have a conversation with them if I don't know what that college plays like, what their style of play is, but also I've done a little bit of research into the type of play they have, and that's what we try to always make sure it's the right fit by talking to those colleges. Okay, you need a center back in 2022. What type of center back? Tell me how you play. Tell me what you're looking for. What are the key attributes? And, there's some colleges that are able to answer that and some that aren't. And we're able to kind of understand what we need to try to send their way so that those kids can have success. And then also the programs can be excited about what they're getting in because it's exactly what they thought. So.
No, absolutely. And I guess what I would wonder is obviously kids maybe not in nationals or maybe like you said, the kids that aren't like the top players on their teams that are going to clearly get noticed no matter what. What's the type of advice that you can have for those kids to, really make themselves stand out, or the things that they need to do when it comes to getting recruited for college?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, figuring out and working with your coach on what your strengths are, because ultimately at the end of the day, that's what's going to get you the opportunity, right? So making sure that you have film, and that's what you don't have to have some sort of fancy video system. Obviously those are brilliant, right? But it can be as simple as a mom or a dad with a camera, or, even an iPhone or an iPad, something like that with a tripod. You can get a tripod for $20.
Yep.
So, it's one of those things that get yourself some film, right? Creating highlights that showcase your talent, but also have full game footage. And then the thing that I think is so powerful and that the kids are actually really good at is creating, whether it's via Instagram, whatever it is, but create a soccer account, right? That showcases who you are as a person. Because especially with the And I always tell them, keep your personal account private, right? Because that's you and your friends and whatever you want to put out with that, but have something that is public and visible to colleges. So, because they all do research, right? So they can get to, especially now that you can't really talk to anyone until they're a junior as a college. It's about, okay, in that time period, what are you doing to separate yourself from other people? So how are you getting the message out there that, one, you're a great person, you're a leader, you're a good student, all these things that are important to collegiate coaches at all levels. So, in that Instagram account, you can be setting up, hey, this is obviously some highlights and clips, and this is what I worked on in training, but also this is my dog, and this is my family, and this is what I like to do in my free time, so that they can start to get a little bit of a narrative of who you are, because that really will accelerate the process as you get to when you can talk. So I think those are really crucial. And then, not being afraid to reach out and to send emails and, hey, here's some clips, here's some film, here's my Instagram account, so you can check out some clips and things like that. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to hear back, but you've created a repeated history of expressing interest. So when they can watch you, when they can talk to you, they know your name, right? Which is such an important piece that, is so often forgotten about.
Yeah,
is the process leading up to before you get there.
No, absolutely. I think we kind of talked about it it goes back to how you have to create these connections with the players as coaches. Now as players, if you can create a connection with a coach, or they can there's going to be, this is just the reality, there's going to be a few players that are probably very similar to you, but the truth is if that coach feels like you're a better fit as a personality, because they just personally they formed a better relationship early on, you probably have a better chance of making that over those other two or other players, just because this is everything, regardless of what field you're in. It's a relationship business. They always say, right? It's about who you know. And so you have to kind of get to know like that. So anytime I'm talking to my players, they're like, yeah, I'm going to send this out to these coaches. It's great. You personalize each one. They're like, well, yeah. And I was like, no. I know you say but you need to personalize. But you need to do it, right? Because we're all people. We want to make sure we want to feel like the person. It's like you said, you do the research, because if you send them a player that, regardless of their level, they don't fit, it doesn't matter. The coaches want to know that the players at least cared enough to do a little bit of research and those things.
That's the thing is, for some reason, a lot of times we, try to approach sports in a different way than we would a lot of life.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of, if you want to go and get a job, you don't just sort of call them and go, don't really know what you do or what things look like, but, I'd be great. So, it's that kind of conversation all the time. And I think, you nailed a point there is, as coaches, we've got to help our players and their families realize that, look, you're not competing with the people in Saginaw, in Detroit, in Grand Rapids. You're competing with kids in LA. You're competing with kids in Indianapolis, depending on obviously where the school is and how they recruit. But, I think so oftentimes we get raised in our little bubble and we forget that there's a big world out there, right? And it's, there are hundreds of versions of you. So it's what can you do to separate yourself, right? And what are you willing to do that others aren't? So it's, if you're doing extra training, brilliant, post something about it. If you've learned a new trick, post something about it. And I'm not saying as well, on the flip side of it, you don't need to be the person that posts 7 times a day. 2 to 3 things a week are great. But if you start that when you're a freshman or sophomore, by the time you can talk to colleges, your junior year, you've got, 100 posts or something like that. And it's so easy to, in your introductory emails, to include, hey, here's my Instagram account. Here's a couple of games. Boom. Right. You've got all this set up. So now you're not scrambling when you've gone, oh God, I need to do all this college recruiting stuff. It's, hey, you've actually done a lot of the back work. Now the rest should be fun. And that's the big thing of changing how players feel when they commit, right? It shouldn't be, oh, thank God that's over. It's, I'm so excited to go to college next, right? That should be your emotion, that you're proud and you're so excited, not thank God that's over.
No. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think we both know that a lot of players do find themselves in that situation where it's one of the most stressful times of their lives, and it really shouldn't be. It should be a very exciting time.
Yeah, exactly. It's the next chapter, right? So you should be enjoying it.
Absolutely. You did talk about recording and doing those type of things, especially with the introduction of VO and obviously more advanced software like that. Like how important is it? What kind of advantages does it bring you to record not only games but sessions as a coach?
Yeah, I think it's kind of multifaceted, right? One of the biggest things that I found is watching yourself as a coach as well, right? In terms of the little things you don't realize when you're in the session. It's like players, you don't necessarily realize when you're on the field exactly how everything looks, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
combination of you can work on your positioning, you can work on how your voice is carrying the tone that you have, and I think the best thing is you're able to see the reaction of the players to what you say. And it's not necessarily the two or three that are right in front of you. It's the players that are just out of vision that might be in like, I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. Or, are they bought in? Are they shaking their heads? And it allows you those little things, right?
Right.
And as well, you can start to look at, okay, what are the issues that I'm seeing in games, right? And how do they correlate to what training sessions I'm running? So do my training sessions look like the game? Am I helping my players to solve those problems? And then is it or isn't it coming out on game day? And how do you morph that? And I think as well, being able to like I clip a lot of video to send to college coaches, and then I've got to be better about it. But now that I'm getting a little bit more time back, I'm able to send these to players and work with them on it. Is you get obviously your sessions are themed, right? So you've got a particular point you're typically working on, or a couple of points. So you're going to get hundreds of repetitions of that action, as opposed to in a game, it might only come out a few times. So it allows you to really hone in on, okay, we're understanding principle 1 and 2, but 3 is a bit iffy, and 1A, the sub principle or whatever it might be, we're not quite there yet. So it allows you to remember that when you're dealing with young players or even pros, going over something 1, 2, 3 times isn't enough. It's got to be about building a habit. It's the same thing they talk about, building any kind of habit, whether it's going to the gym or, talking to your mum or whatever. It takes 30 days to build the beginnings of a habit. So it's the same thing with teaching them various things. So, there's days where we don't get out with the first learning activity, and that's okay, right? Because we need to understand it, and then we revisit it. And then it's, on my Academy Director course, I was really lucky to have Doug Lemoff come in a couple of times and talk about, how people learn. And he's actually just brought a book that's brilliant on how soccer players learn specifically, and how coaches can teach things, and, the cycle of how long you have to let things go where they start to forget in order to reintroduce it to create a memory, as opposed to just, well, we did that in training, why aren't you doing it in the game? And it's, one, you either haven't done it enough, or two, you haven't taught it correctly. And I think that's the big thing as coaches is, when you can really step back and see, okay, I had my session written out in my notebook, but did I actually meet my objectives? When I'm able to, objectively look at it and not have my innate biases during the time. So did I really meet it? Does it look like the game? Because I think that's something that so often we do, is we get on players about stuff that we've only marginally covered, and we get upset with them, the things they do in the game. But how can we do that? Because we haven't taught them. It's like giving a test without having taught the subject. And it was like when we were in lockdown, or not lockdown, but when we were, no contact was allowed, and you could only do individual stuff. So we did tons of finishing stuff, and different moments of how you arrive off of crosses and what you finish off of stuff. So we knew we could score goals. But the thing we hadn't worked on at all the whole winter was defending. So we knew we were going to give up goals. So we went out, and in Texas, I think one of our first games was like a 4-4, right? And it's a game that we probably could have won 5 or 6-0, because the goals were things, they hit one wonder goal, but there were things that we could have easily tightened up. And so that's what we've been really addressing now, is we went back, with obviously 18, 19-year-old girls, and we went back to principles of 1v1 defending, and how you add in 2v1s and 2v2, and okay, what's the difference between being numbers down, cutting the field in half, having positive depth as opposed to negative depth for the cover, and just things like that. And all of a sudden, now things are much tighter. So it'll be really fun to see the next games. Either we get better, or I fire myself, one of the two here. So
fair enough.
Right.
When it comes to video, though, I kind of think that now for coaches, it's almost like a resume, more so than like the licensing and stuff like that. Like, all right, like, yeah, it's like you said, like, you can be an A license and not be that great a coach. You could be a non-licensed coach and be great. But what's going to show that more than like literally a club or whoever looking to maybe hire you, they can literally see the work that you do every day on the training pitch and on the field and for game days. And I think like that's kind of where we've gone to is like, oh, you got to use this as your resume. And like, you know, social media isn't just for the players, like building a brand as coaches, right? Like I think we just learned with the quarantine and stuff, like you can't just like rely on the old ways of doing things. It's like you got to really build a brand now with like social media, with videos, and all of those things. I think you have to bring all of that to the table now, or you might get left behind.
Well, and it's like you said, it's ultimately this is where social media is wonderful and horrific at the same time, right? Because and that's, you know, you've got to have thick skin as a coach.
Yeah.
You know, not just for parents, but outside people. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, emotional intelligence problems for a lot of people, but, you know, who are going to be jealous and things like that. But, you know, I did that. And a lot of times I would put, you know, an activity out that I'd filmed or a clip from training, you know, a clip from a game, put that out on social media, and you'd get, you know, there's nobody that knows more than an anonymous person on social media. I'm telling you how you should do your job or what's good or what's bad. But it allows you, one, you develop a little bit of a thick skin, but two, again, it goes back to challenging you of what do you believe? You know, so it's okay, maybe somebody sees something different about an activity you did. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Certain level of, you know, people going, oh, this is amazing. Okay, you throw those out the window. They say you throw out a couple of people that go, how are you even a coach? You know, you throw those out the window, and you find out, you know, they don't even coach themselves.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, but you can get some really good feedback in terms of people going, well, does that really work? Because it doesn't apply to the game because of this. And you go, oh, okay, hang on a minute. Yeah, that's right. Or no, I believe it because of this. And then you can create dialogue. And I think that's a rapid way to get better quicker, both in terms of things that you might not see, but also, again, challenging what you believe. Do you really believe it? Why and how?
No, I think it's great, and I think the way that you've used it is a good benchmark of like how to do it, right? Like I think you've done a good job of obviously not just with the clubs you're with, but for yourself, because you know that like at any time, like it's not like we're in a job that's like the most secure. Obviously, if you do a good job, great. But like it's a volatile job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's certain benchmarks that you have to hit or whatever, and if you don't, you could be looking for a new job. But if you can create this personal brand that people get behind, it's the same thing, right? You'll probably get more offers and more jobs down the line and different things like that. So I think one, you've done a great job, and I think a lot of people they can learn from that for sure.
Thank you.
So here's the part of the show where we test your knowledge a little bit. I love trivia. All right.
Yeah.
And so at every we usually play some games. Sometimes we do some like hot topic things, and then a lot of times we do trivia. I make the trivia so it is centered around things that you're involved with, though. For this, it's going to be very Newcastle United based.
Oh, love it.
So
I'm going to be embarrassed if I fail now. Yeah.
It's not always the easiest, so just know. But 5 questions, so you can find out whether you really know Newcastle United trivia.
Brilliant.
All right. First question, and I gotta make sure that I blend what you do and then obviously the club you love. So, Newcastle's youngest ever player in a European competition was who? And I will say I didn't go with anybody that was like any questions that had to do with something in like the 1920s or 40s or 50s, because I wouldn't expect you to know that. So they're relatively recent.
Is it going to be James Milner?
It's not.
Oh, okay.
Adam Campbell.
Oh yeah, now he's at Blackburn. Yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah.
So
he didn't play very much. So yeah.
But it was I think it was like 2012 or something like that.
Okay.
All right. So you kind of have the idea of how it is. All right.
Solid start. Yeah.
Which striker has had the most prolific season as a Newcastle player?
It's going to be Alan Shearer. No, or Les Ferdinand, or Andy Cole. Oh, I bet you it is. It's going to be Andy Cole, isn't it?
Final answer? I say stick with your gut. If you always stick with your gut, right?
Right, but then it's going.
You've had some good strikers.
Yeah, no, those are the three that you go. They put 30 plus up.
I will tell you the goal tally is 41.
Oh, okay. Is this all competitions or just the Premier League?
I believe it's all competitions. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Shearer.
Should have stuck with your gut.
I should have stuck with Andy Cole.
Yeah, you should have stuck with Andy Cole. It was Andy Cole. Come on, I had to put. I tried to black out Andy Cole because he got me so excited, and then broke my heart a year later, right? So yeah, that's of course I had to put something about Andy Cole in there.
Yeah, fair.
All right, this one's gonna be multiple choice because it'd be a lot more difficult if it wasn't. Who has the best goal per game ratio out of all these strikers? Demba Ba, Papa Cisse, Andy Cole, or Alan Shearer? And so I should say the best goal per ratio in a season.
Okay, in a season. I'm gonna go with Demba Ba.
Unfortunately, no.
I'm struggling here, aren't I?
Yeah. It's Cisse.
Okay, because those two, when they were together, scored every game.
And so, I'll be honest, it's a little bit of a trick question because Cisse came in, I believe, in January.
Yep.
And so he scored 13 and like 11. and he was unbelievable. So it was Cisse. So not bad. Again, another question about young players. All right. Okay. How many PFA Young Player of the Year awards does Newcastle have? So how many players won the PFA Young Player of the Year? It's been a little bit since you've won one, just so you know.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Let's say 3.
Final answer.
Final answer.
You're so close. You're so close. It was 4.
4. Yep.
Okay. Paul Gascoigne.
Yep.
Andy Cole.
Yep.
Bellamy.
Yep.
And Jermaine Jenas.
That's the one that killed me. Yeah.
Which
Bobby Robson era. Yeah, he was all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, he had some not so nice words about Newcastle recently. So
exactly.
We just X him out. So honestly, it might just be 3.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't count anymore.
Him and Michael Owen are no longer welcome on Tyneside. That's some of their comments. Yeah.
That's fair. That is fair. All right.
Brilliant, solid 0 for 5. Love it.
No. You got one more. Come on.
Here we go.
You got one more. I think you got this. All right. Had to blend your two homes. Which American has played the most games for Newcastle?
DeAndre Yedlin.
It is DeAndre Yedlin.
There we go. Thank goodness.
To be fair, I was a little shocked. You've only had 3 that I could find. Yeah. Andrew Parkinson had 3 games, and Gooch had 11. So
it was not a ton.
Exactly. Yeah. So look at that. You got one.
I actually got to see when I was back in the UK the last time. I went to the Newcastle Bournemouth game and got to see DeAndre Yedlin score that ridiculous diving header that they now do to the John Cena. It's brilliant. But yeah, that was a brilliant one. So yeah, he was a quality player for us when he was fit, healthy, and being played correctly.
Yeah, and it looks like he's doing all right over in Turkey right now.
Yeah, that's quite a culture change from Seattle to Newcastle to Turkey.
To Turkey, yeah, big change. I always tell this to any of my Newcastle fans that are friends. Columbus Crew. I had my mom's best friend. She lives right in Columbus. They where their house was. They were building their training complex right by it. So it was like in the vicinity. So they had to get their permission to build the complex. So anyone who agreed got could always get tickets, right? And so we ended up getting tickets to it was a game, Columbus Crew versus Newcastle.
I was there, 2-2 tie.
There you go. And so I was in high school, went with my buddy, and I was not going to support. I'll be honest, not a big MLS fan, so I wasn't going to support the Columbus Crew. And so painted my body, like did the checkerboard black and white, trying to get into the supporters section. Yeah. Almost went horribly wrong. Because Newcastle fans are some serious fans.
Yes, very passionate. Yeah, exactly.
And so basically, there was like he wasn't a security guard, but he was just like there to like stop people from coming in.
Warning. Yeah, this isn't quite the American fan. Yeah.
So he started like asking us questions. My buddy had no clue what he's talking about. I'm just like, shut up. And so luckily, I think I want to say you guys had just sold somebody. I can't remember who it was, but and like had some like bigger signings, and like it was just in the news, right? So so I was able to like get that, and so I just started talking about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, go on in." And I was like, whew. And then then I was taught chants and everything. Some offbeat people. Those chants were not on beat whatsoever, but it was some of the most fun I've had at a football match for sure. It was a good time.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So David, it's been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, we're in the same club, but we're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as like where our clubs are at, and so we don't get a whole lot of time to talk. So I do appreciate you coming on. Before you go, I want to give you a chance to plug anything you got going on, tell everybody where they can see you, and then any last words you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously a big thank you, first of all, for asking me to come on. Really enjoyed it. So, I'm on social media. So at Twitter, it's at CoachDR7. And on Instagram, it's at David Robertson 2307. So, anyone that has questions, I have a lot of people kind of reach out weekly and ask, hey, we'd love to see some games or training. I'm always happy to share. I'm always happy to give feedback. So, all I ask in return is that you give me some feedback back. So, that's what I would love to see. So, anyone that wants any help or wants to see something, more than happy to do that. But, we're all bit, and I think it's a cool thing here, two Nationals people being able to talk. And even though we're a couple hours apart, I think it shows the kind of strength of the club. It really is one club, right? Yeah. A lot of people say that, but, everyone loves celebrating each other's success. And, I'm really, really excited about the direction both the club and Detroit and Michigan soccer's headed in. So I think it's going to be a really exciting couple of generations here for this area.
No, absolutely. And I definitely couldn't put it better myself. Again, I appreciate you so much. Guys, this has been Tactical Foul. Kyle Grew, David Robertson. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.